You're listening to Ecto Portal, a journey into the unknown with Anthony Anderson and VERNA Wilson.
I hope that you are seated comfortably with the light turned down and the curtains drawn.
Somebody there?
Hello, once again, to another journey into the unexplored, the unexplained Ecto Portal. I'm Anthony Anderson, your host, and I'm here with my co-host,
VERNA Wilson.
And
hi, everybody.
Hello, how's everybody doing? We're actually going to have an interesting show today. It's about curses, it's about witches, modern day curses and witches. And Verna, what's your opinion on your beliefs about witches and whether they can curse people? Do you think that's something that actually could happen, or has happened, or could still happen?
It definitely could happen, but a real witch would do it responsibly and only during an extreme situation. They wouldn't just do it lightly. We did a whole show once about curses. Do you remember that?
Yep,
you remember
I
that
do.
show? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So
what would be your definition of a curse done in the most extreme correct way for a witch?
In an extreme correct way.
Yeah. How would a witch do a curse if it was actually just and legit?
Okay. They would go about it by assessing the situation, and rather there's no other remedy for the situation. Like, take for example, if they needed to protect a community or somebody, and there's no other remedy but to actually place a curse on the situation. Now, a curse would mean that they're not telling you what your judgment's going to be. They're leaving that up to the spirits that the spirit or the deity that they invoke. What they're saying is that something needs to be done that's going to protect and help whatever situation you are working on, and that it's going to eventually end with something that's going to protect and help the person and end the situation that's hurting somebody.
So you're saying a curse should only be used for good rather than revenge or bad?
Absolutely. And the reason for that is because if you're the one generating the curse, so if you go ahead and you curse somebody to revenge them or to wish them ill, and there's no other reason other than malice or because you want revenge, then you're generating it. So you're actually it's going to boomerang back to you. And the reason it's going to boomerang back to you is because you are the one generating it, and there's absolutely no reason why this can't flow both ways.
So it's it's very similar to what voodoo their practice is too. Like, you only use it in absolute extreme situations, but be very careful what you do. Curse someone or you have a spell on someone, because like you said, it could come back tenfold upon you, and rather than the person you intended it for.
Right, because you're the one who's generating and putting it out. So you know how it is when you put, like when you're doing something, like take for example, if you're creating, you paint, right? You're creating
Yeah.
a piece of art. Yeah. So when you're creating a piece of art, you're painting a picture, and you have an ideal in your mind, but you're the one creating the art. So the idea tends to grow and grow, and it evolves into something else.
Yeah.
So and then you go ahead and sell that piece of art, and people say something like, "I like that piece of art so much that it visualized me thinking about something that you're doing," and then suddenly your perceptions of these pictures and these visions about what else you want to create start to grow. So it's like creating something, but you're growing it, and
Yeah.
you're evolving it.
Yep.
And you're the creator, so it's going to keep flowing back.
So let's say for in this particular case, like a witch's curse, if a witch curses somebody, they're already gestating and creating this curse. And if the person who's cursed kind of ponders this curse, thinks I've been cursed, oh my God, it's a worse curse, they're actually keeping that alive and continually having the curse grow and change and morph, perhaps get bigger and stronger because they buy into it and they believe it. So thus for the curse is actually successful because the person who cursed and the person who was cursed both then believe in it and nurture it, and it's given life from both sides.
Right, it's like planting a seed.
Mm-hmm.
You know how it is when somebody's angry and they leave the room. You could feel the anger in the room still, even after they've left it.
Yeah, yep, that thick feeling after they've left, the emotions are still there. Just the feeling of it. Absolutely.
Right. And a curse will leave the same thing, especially one that's planned and that's done by somebody who's actually an expert. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of people do what's called smaller curses. And when I'm talking about a smaller curse, people will say will say things that they don't think about, but it can actually have an effect. Like, take, for example, if somebody gets mad at you for bumping into them and they say, go play in a crowded freeway. Mm-hmm. And they're wishing bad on you. Of course, you're not going to go play on a crowded freeway. You're probably just going to go walk on your way to wherever you're going. Yeah. But they're wishing ill on you, and then suddenly you're crossing the street, and by mistake, a car nearly misses you. So, I mean, I'm just saying as an example. It doesn't mean that that's going to happen. If you think about something and you don't keep pondering upon it, it's fine. But people can wish negative things all the time. And sometimes if they keep repeating it, or if you have it in your mind, it's a small thing.
But would a witch have to call that a curse to make it an official curse? Or just the practice of wishing bad upon someone and then continually keep wishing that same bad? Does that signify as an official curse, even if you don't say, I curse you?
I would think so, yeah.
So the intent
I would
is still
think
there.
so.
The intention's still there.
The intent is still there. That's why it's very important to watch your intentions and to watch your emotions and the way you're generating it at somebody else. Because do you notice? Okay, let's do another example. Let's forget about the crowded freeway thing. That's a very small thing that rarely happens. Do you notice that when you're mad at somebody, or when you are continually angry about somebody, something that happened between you and that person, that you attract similar situations? Like, take for example, you're mad at somebody because of the way they ripped you off, but you find that you're getting ripped off a lot. You're saying, oh, that always happens to me. I'm always getting ripped off because that person ripped me off majorly. Now everybody rips me off. You know why? Because you're generating the fact that you're getting ripped off. And you're attracting it because you're thinking about it. You're so angry.
You welcome the invitation that was sent to you as a curse.
Absolutely. There you go.
So you let it spread. You basically open the door and let it spread throughout your life and out over you. And you've welcomed it. Even if you think you haven't, you still have, because you're still giving it life. You're talking about it. You're sharing experiences that obviously you've led that are connected to it. So you are giving that curse its life. The
You're
original.
giving it life. You give
Yep.
life to something. Have you noticed that people who are into high drama and talk about it all the time keep inviting more and more? So they're always talking about
Yeah.
it.
Who's to whom?
They're
I always wondered, the people that are like that, did someone curse them originally a long time ago, and they just continually lived in this hamster wheel of a curse of their own personal drama?
That's part of it, but do you notice that they're always saying something like, I feel like I've been cursed because this
Yeah.
happened to me a long time ago. Now
Yep.
this keeps happening, that keeps happening.
Yep. Exactly.
So even if they have the freedom to break that up, they're probably not doing it because they're inviting it back.
Yep. Yep. Rather than sit down and say, you know what, this stuff will no longer affect me. It has nothing to do with me. I no longer give it permission to control me or what I do or my life. I cast out any intentions like
right.
this. I think some people get addicted to that. So if they are in that perpetual, where they help nurture that curse or that ill feeling, they help. To them, that's how they know they're alive. Is they have this bad thing after another going on, and they welcome it. They talk about it. They share it, and it continually happens because if it's a curse, it's gonna happen over and over again. And maybe to some weird, sick, sadistic way, they kind of enjoy it to an extent.
Right. And believe it or not, that's even a smaller grade curse, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Now imagine if it's a real curse done by somebody who's really well versed in these things, and they really do it with intent. Imagine how much larger that's going to affect the person rather than just feeding on something else that is going to affect you for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But that's why, and I always say, anybody who's a shaman or a witch or somebody who's practicing a form of ritual magic always thinks carefully before they even attempt such a thing.
And to me, that makes complete sense. That be careful the words that you choose, the words that you use to other people, because those words will have an impact on you and them. I think that's good advice for anybody with anything, but even more so, obviously, with curses or ill intent.
Right, because they're working with the spirit world, and they're going within. So when you're going within and you're working with the spirit world, and you're expecting it to come back to the to manifest in the physical world, that's gonna have quite an effect on the physical world, including you.
Yeah, I think with curses in this particular story will be a witch's curse. There is a certain level of ego and psychological attack, a psychological attack. Because any curse, when you tell someone who may be naive about curses or whatever and say, I curse you, if that person buys into that stuff anyway, if they're very superstitious, you already know, and you're preying on their beliefs and their paranoia to begin with. So you know that person is just going to be, it's going to excel. They're going to ponder this and mull it over and keep thinking about it, and everything that happens to them, it's suddenly going to be related to that curse. I think people who do curses probably are aware of that, and maybe are aware of certain ways to curse someone, to what to say to them to kind of trigger that. And I have a hunch with this particular story that we're going to talk about today, I have a hunch that's exactly what was done. Is this particular witch kind of knows what to say to people to get them kind of started themselves on their own curse. Like, I'll give you the beginning of the curse, and I know I'll leave it up to you to continue to grow and grow and grow and nurture it. So I have a hunch that's what happened in this particular story.
Sure, and this happened in the Bay Area, correct?
Yeah, part of it did. So
part of it did. Okay.
Kick it off. This is a story about Christopher Case and the witch's curse. It's actually a modern story from the 90s. And we'll go ahead and dig right in. Now, as we said before, I said, do you think witch curses can be true? We talked about that. Is it possible for a man or woman claiming to be a witch or warlock to seek revenge on another person? Can someone hold such magic? Now, we have a very real and very modern case that comes from a man in Seattle, Washington named Christopher Case, who claimed to have had a very frightening experience that was thrust upon him. Christopher was an elevator music executive. I pity that job.
Me too.
In the mid-1990s. He was always on the lookout for older vintage songs that he could license easily and inexpensively to be recorded by new artists. He would often travel around the country to meet with people to acquire their music catalogs of publishing rights. Now, on April 11th in 1991, Christopher was to meet up with a woman in San Francisco to discuss helping him locate these types of songs that he was seeking. They met for dinner, and it was not long before she had begun to make romantic advances upon him, and he kind of felt a strange vibe from her. Although he was flattered at her attention, he had an inkling of kind of mistrust towards her, and he declined her offers and she began to grow angry and had nothing short of a fit at their table. She told him that she'll curse him for his refusals upon her and said, "You'll be sorry and most likely dead within a week." The woman fled the restaurant they were eating at and left Christopher alone and shaken by her outburst. Now,
Jeez.
again, she's planted the seed. You'll be sorry and most likely dead within a week. So she said, you'll be sorry, you'll most likely be dead, and within a week. So she set 3 things on him. You'll be dead,
Jeez.
you'll be sorry, and it's all going to happen in a week. So that already is going to start his mind thinking, oh my God, this woman said I'll be dead in a week. This is so crazy. Why would she?
That's almost like a threat.
Yeah.
Even if he didn't know it was an invisible curse, that's almost a threat.
Right, but she still said, it's a curse. She didn't. I don't think she said the word curse. She just said, "You'll be sorry. You'll be dead within a week." So, on April 14th, literally 3 days later, Christopher told his friends that he was worried that the curse might be real. He was experiencing weird events in his apartment. He was hearing all kinds of voices and whispers. He saw shadow figures in doorways moving out of the corner of his eye, and he woke up at one point and was feeling someone's hands wrapped around his throat, squeezing it as hard as they could. He also reported that the witch was attacking him in his sleep, and he was waking up with little cuts on his fingers and blood on his hands. This happened a number of times, I guess. Eventually, it would get to the point where he would stay at hotels and avoid sleeping in his own apartment. He called his close friends who lived across country and told them he believed the woman had indeed cursed him. He was in a really big panic, and he began visiting Christian bookstores and stocking up on crucifixes and Bibles, and even spoke with the man at the bookstore about the situation. 2 days later, Christopher revisited the man at the bookstore and told him the witch had been attacking him all night, and he told him about his cut fingers and the blood on his sheets. On the 17th, he called his friends, and he's saying he would probably die tonight. So that literally is almost 1 week later. Now, we're going to continue on the story, but we're actually going to have 2 articles from the Seattle Times where he was from, or actually where I'm from too, talking about the case as it happened. And it's interesting because the police would have to go backwards. They would have the crime scene and they would have to backpedal to kind of tie it all, stitch it all together. So what I just told you was everything that they discovered that kind of led up to this last day where he told his friends he thought he was going to die on the 17th. So go ahead and read that first Seattle Times article. And this is kind of give you an idea of how the police took it, their angle.
Right. It was actually 2 or 3 weeks before King County Police can unravel the death of Christopher, whose body was found surrounded by occult symbols. Now, prompted by information from a Fayetteville, North Carolina woman who told police that the man felt his life was in jeopardy after a woman put a curse on him, the King County Police found the body of Christopher Case, who was only 35 years old, in an empty bathtub in his apartment in the 1300 block of North 152nd Street shortly after 4 p.m. on Thursday. There was no evidence of foul play, but the presence of several crucifixes and piles of kosher salt throughout the apartment had baffled investigators. The King County Police, Maj Jackson Beard, he said the salt and other objects at the scene had some significant in self-protection against demons or evil forces, A book, Strange Customs, explains that salt is a devil repellent. So police found lines of salt poured along the base of the walls throughout the apartment with piles at the corners. The same thing was done on the porch where the salt was poured in geometric designs. It's pretty clear that he thought something was going on, said Beard of the deceased man. However, Beard said that the crime scene didn't suggest that someone came in and did something to him. What Beard said is that the police will know more when the tests are done that determine if there was any toxic substances in his bloodstream, and that took at least 2 weeks. At this point, this is a suspicious death, something that needs to be explained, said Beard, who was commander of the King County Police North Precinct. I don't believe that there was any foul play. Obviously, though, I'd like to know what the toxicology report says. This could be a suicide, a natural death, or there could be something else here going on. The unnamed woman who tipped off the police was a friend of Case. She told police that Case felt his life was in jeopardy after a woman from San Francisco put a curse on him several weeks ago. Letters, notes, and other written material found in the apartment appear to support that information. There was also evidence that Case was trying to seek psychic help to ward off the curse. Sammy Suter, a woman from North Carolina who telephoned the Seattle Times, believed that Case may have died from fright. She said Case had called her several times over the past few weeks, expressing strong fear for his life. He said he met a woman who was a witch and was attempting to get him to be enamored of her. When he refused to respond, the woman supposedly put a curse on him, said Souter. Souter, who expressed shock at his death, said she'd known Case for 10 years and that he'd always been stable. But a week ago, Case called and left a message on her recorder that people are trying to do things to me, but he didn't elaborate. He left the same message with our friend in Fayetteville. He was frantic, she said. Both women tried to contact Case by phone several times over the next 3 days. Finally, the woman in Fayetteville called King County Police and expressed concern over Case's welfare. Souter said that the police went into the apartment a couple times, but there was no response. It was locked during those times, but when police returned the last time, the door was unlocked. Police found lines of salt poured around the base of walls throughout the apartment and on the porch.
Now, we both know that obviously salt is to ward off evil. It isn't to ward off just demons. It's to ward off bad things in general.
Right, it is, and if you and creating salt actually on making certain lines. You're probably creating a sacred space for protection. So you use certain lines and certain boundaries during a ritual for that. So he was likely trying to do a ritual to protect himself.
And interesting enough, when he was in the tub, he was fully clothed. There was no water in the tub. It was surrounded by candles. He just laid in the tub. So there was no water in it. It wasn't a suicide. He didn't have any knives. He didn't cut himself. There was nothing found on the body itself.
And that's the weird part too. That's really the weird part.
Yep. So that article that you just read was April 22nd. So that was literally a week after he called that woman. And this next article is going to be literally 2 weeks after that. It's another Seattle Times article. A man found dead in unusual circumstances last month after expressing fear that he was the target of a witch's curse died of heart failure, medical examiners reported yesterday. The death of Christopher Case, 35, has drawn wide interest because he told friends he feared he was under a witch's curse. The cause of death was acute myocarditis, said Rich Gardner, a medical investigator with the King County Medical Examiner's Office. Officers found Case's clothed body April 18th in a waterless tub in his apartment, and they asked after they asked to check up on him by a woman friend in Fayetteville, North Carolina. The woman, whose name was not disclosed, a former radio broadcaster in Raleigh, North Carolina, told her in phone calls that he was afraid a witch in San Francisco put a curse on him. The Fayetteville woman said Case told her the witch had cast a spell on him because he would not return her affections. There was no sign of a crime, no sign of violence, robbery, or foul play, Gardner said. About 10 burned down candles and crucifixes were found by investigating officers in the apartment, lines of salt. Another Fayetteville woman, Sammy Soder, a psychic and teacher, was a friend of Case's, said he expressed his fear in several phone calls a few days before his body was found. Sauter said Case was stable and healthy and did not believe in witchcraft. and she said she had advised him to get help. So they think heart failure where he just literally died of fright. So he might have self-triggered himself, like he totally was going to be consumed. He
Could have been extreme stress, is what I'm wondering.
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of all of that. But again, it goes to where the seed was planted. And it's funny because he didn't believe in witchcraft, yet he obviously latched on to this curse idea that, kind of drove into this frenzy of going to the bookstore, getting books, seeking help, finding out what he needs to do to ward off evil, and to go as far as lighting the candles and has the salt in the tub. He obviously believed in it at a certain point, because he wouldn't have gotten to where he was.
Right, he believed in it enough when she told him, so she must have generally frightened him. I wonder why nobody asked what her name was and questioned her, is what I wonder.
The other woman, yeah, I agree.
I mean, if you're meeting somebody for dinner, you know what their name is, and I'm surprised nobody questioned her. Have you been harassing this man? Do you know him? Why did you do that? I mean, if it's a crime case where somebody died,
they probably
you would want to make sure.
They probably tried to follow up on it. I'm sure that he told his friends it was this woman, this is her name, here's where we went and had dinner. I'm sure he had contacts, and his friends probably knew from what he told. I'm sure he told his friends, because obviously he made phone calls saying this woman did this to him. So I'm sure he's relayed some of it, but we don't know what the police found. They may have questioned her. They may have said, she's in San Francisco. She didn't do it. He's dead. There's no crime.
Right, but they couldn't find enough evidence or anything.
Yeah. There's no break-in. There's no sign of a struggle. There's no cuts. There's no wounds. Nobody did anything to him physically, so they can't really say there's been a crime, because there's no evidence of a crime. So
in my opinion, she obviously hit a weak spot in him, and there are people who practice a certain form of magic where they can hit weak spots in your psyche. So she might have hit a weak spot in him, and whereas he didn't believe it before, and he was he was a skeptic, something in him frightened him enough where he started to think about it a lot.
Yeah, it sounds like,
and that's very sad and scary.
Like I was saying before, it's almost like psychological, where they can prey on certain people who aren't aware, and she can use the right words and the right phrase. In this case, like she said, something horrible is going to happen. You'll probably be dead in a week. So it was just enough things to set in motion that he may not believe in witchcraft and curses, but the fact that someone told you you're going to die in a week and it's going to be horrible, I mean, that's going to freak anyone out. It doesn't necessarily mean you know a lot or believe in a lot of witch stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's enough to get a threat from somebody. Bad enough when somebody threatens you, but I mean, he could have just thought it was just a physical threat, and then it kind of preyed upon him. Maybe he started having nightmares, and maybe it bothered him, and then it started getting worse and worse.
Yep, and we also have to think about the fact that he heard voices in his apartment, disembodied voices, saw a shadow figure, someone was strangling him. Now, that doesn't mean maybe there's something evil that followed him. Maybe there was something evil around her that followed him back to Seattle, and that literally was just attached to him, like a bad attachment that was just driving him.
Well, that's very possible, because people's thoughts of you can actually infiltrate you. They can. If somebody thinks awful of you and they're thinking about you a lot, and you're sensitive enough to pick up on it, he must have been very what you call an empath. You know how have you ever heard of people who are such an empath that they take in emotions very easy? They're like a sponge.
Yep.
But he didn't know it, so
I think that
felt
could be
it
the
from
case,
her.
where when he got back home, or he heard the voices, whatever, it could be he had an ability that he wasn't even aware of, And it
Yeah.
could be he associated that with this curse, and maybe it wasn't part of the curse, but it just things started to happen to him, and he figured, oh, everything must be related to this curse. So by doing that, he's giving the curse power.
Right.
Even though he's
Right.
having these experiences that may not even be related, the disembodied voices, the choking him, the shadow figures in his apartment. And he said these, what did he say? What was his quote? He said these people are trying to do stuff to him. Wasn't that what he told?
I think so. And it could be that because his auric field was so weakened and he was so busy thinking about it that he attracted negative energy and spirits to him. I mean, it's just a thought. I don't know if that's really what happened, but
Yeah.
it almost kind of reminds me of that when people are possessed or people fall into that.
I would be curious. I mean, obviously, no one's going to know now, but whether he had any experiences of any kind before this. Like, had he ever had any sightings before? Had he ever had any paranormal situations or encounters that he may not have thought of, but it could have been early signs of stuff that was around him that he was able to tap into, but he didn't realize it. And now in this place where he's losing sleep, everything's really, really heightened as far as the curse goes. He just associated everything with the curse, whereas it could be something else entirely. But I don't know. It's one perpetuates the other.
According to his friends, no, but he's not going to tell them.
Yeah. Well, they said he didn't believe in witchcraft. That doesn't mean he didn't have some kind of ability where he tapped into it and wasn't aware of it, is what I'm saying.
Right. He never experienced anything like that, so he didn't talk about it.
Yeah, so it's hard to say without more of his background. We can only guess, I think. But I think it's interesting because it's a modern story. I mean, it's obviously 91, which is almost, 19 years ago? So it just shows you that this stuff can exist still, even in the modern day. Some people can think they've been cursed and have experiences, but I think there's still something else besides the curse. I think there's some kind of paranormal activity going on around him that, I think so too,
and he picked up on it.
Yep. Yeah. I don't know that it's related to the curse. I for one thinks, like you said, in my opinion of curses, I think they exist if you want them to exist. I think you can associate anything that happens to you with the curse if you allow it. And I think you give the curse power because of that. And I think the person who cursed you is more than happy to hear about that, because you're giving them power by giving the curse power. Thus, the curse works. So curses do exist. It's just a question of whether you give them credence or power or not to happen. And I think you did.
However, I think on some level, if you give them credence or power, they're going to happen, and you're going to be feeding upon it. But there is also the type of curse where even if the person doesn't believe it, if it's done by somebody who's genuinely skilled in that verse of magic, it can happen to them whether they believe it or not. But normally that's with somebody who's very skilled in this type of thing and who's doing it because they feel there's a reason for it. But those reasons are not taken lightly.
No, I just think there's two different things going on. I think the curse was going on, and I think there's some kind of paranormal activity he was picking up on at the same time because of the situation.
I agree.
Stuff he may have brushed off, and maybe he thought, he paid attention to it more because of the curse. He thought, look at these shadows I'm seeing. Oh my God, I hear voices. It must be the curse. So maybe he heard this stuff before and never thought about it or kind of poo-pooed it, but now it's like,
because it wasn't directed at him. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think one perpetuated the other and vice versa. Is what I think.
Agree with you. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's an interesting
it's a horrible
story,
feeling to think about somebody and want to curse them. Even if you just think about it, it's a horrible feeling because you're wishing negativity on somebody, and also you're making it ugly. You're putting blockages, and you're making it really ugly for yourself too.
Yeah, I think so too. That's why I don't.
Yeah, to wish ill on somebody.
Yep. I mean, I don't do that, and if someone ever said it to me, I'd I don't believe in it, so I'm not going to give whatever you say. I'm not going to give it power or even credibility because I just won't believe it. Sorry. You know, you a whole point of a curse is that you do it to yourself. You're told the information, but you do it to yourself. It's almost
I agree.
a self-made torture kit is what a curse is.
I agree.
So it's an interesting story, though. I mean, I thought it was kind of unusual because it was such a modern day story.
It is. It is an interesting story, and you know, I had a friend who ran a shop back in San Francisco during that time, and
was it her?
My friend worked there. Huh?
Was it her?
I'm sorry?
Was she the one that cursed him?
No. Oh no. This person? No. She's one of the most smartest, most responsible, well-intentioned ladies I've ever known. And she ran a shop there, and one of my best friends worked there, and I used to visit the shop all the time, and we got to know the community that would come in, and they would come in for all kinds of things. They would come in for protection. They would come in because they needed help with something. But if they came in and said something like that, I think she would have been appalled, and so would they. So would the staff.
Yep. So it's hard to say where he went or how he found this woman or where she was from. I'd be curious to find out, you know, if she was related to a specific store or you know, group of people. It's hard. We'll never know now, obviously.
Or a tradition that that doesn't put any that freely doesn't put any sort of what do you call it? That doesn't worry about it. But I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
All right, folks. So that's another episode of Ecto Portal. Another interesting case of curses and witches as we find them.
And a modern one at that. Yeah.
A modern one at that. So I guess until next week, we will have another journey into the Ecto Portal and the unknown. So we'll see you then.
Yeah.
Bye.
See you next week. Bye.
Royalty-free, copyright-free music by Kevin MacLeod and Ross Bugden.